Maybe a question to Daniel to start off with about open data. Carsten Broster said earlier that that transparency doesn't necessarily lead to trust. Is it an expression of mistrust in politicians and in workers of the local administration that you want to see everything that they're to have access to all this information and data, or do you see that differently?
Is it? Yeah, it seems to be working cool. There is a lot of mistrust currently in the society. I think is something that nearly every politician needs to deal with. Transparency could create trust. Of course, it not leads to trust anyway. It just leads to trust if politicians are arguing why they are doing anything, and not just doing it and they believe in us. We're doing the best for you. It isn't working, I think. So it is important that we give people the information to realize why politicians are deciding whatever to do. And this is the reason why I think it could create more trust in politics.
Okay. Does maybe the same question to Nick?
Well, civil servants are citizens and politicians are citizens too. If we trust civil servants to understand public information and we trust politicians to understand public information, then we'd be very wrong not to trust the public too. So if we're paying a public organisation money to collect information, why we don't share it with the public, I have no idea. It's ridiculous. The only thing, obviously, when we talk about open data, the only thing that's true is that clearly I don't want information about what operation I'm about to have published. I don't want private data published, but all other public information, if we trust civil servants and politicians with it, we can also trust ourselves with it. So it's, you know, the arguments around the public aren't up to dealing with this information is actually an argument to say we've maintained power by controlling information for 200 years. We don't want to lose that power.
Okay. So if we're talking about trusting citizens to be able to interpret information, does that mean that we're not necessarily, or maybe just a question, so what sort of data is it that we're advocating putting out? Because on the one hand, there are data sets like, I don't know, where parking spaces are or where parking fines are more likely executed. But then I think maybe the thing that people who work for public organisations have a little bit of fear about is, say, if you have expenses, claims and things like that, that if somebody looks at that information and has a particular agenda that they might single out as a particular civil servant, and that there's a certain fear around that. Is that something that you think doesn't exist, or am I misinterpreting what you're aiming for?
Of course, there are special interest groups who are interested in even people who are interested in a special sort of information and focusing on any sort of, people are working in administrations. But there are on the one hand the people who are working in the administrations, and there are people who are responsible for them working, and that are the politicians. And I think there are lots of examples where maybe people on a lower level of administration did something wrong, but in the end the politicians said, okay, I was responsible for it. That's, for example, we got an example about 2 months ago in the central district of Hamburg where the governor said, okay, I'm responsible for it, so I step back. So there are examples currently that this is happening. This is not something that will be really new. What will be new about is that there are, of course, a lot more data. But I don't expect that anyone will go out and say, hey, I have to blame you, for example, or whoever, because you are working for something and you are responsible for deciding something. I think if we really publish all this information, we will really at least look how decisions will be made in administration. And that, I think, will also give some of the people working in the administration a better position of arguing, because they can say, okay, hey, here you can see why I need to decide like that. I really often have it when I'm just thinking about a year ago. I was in the service office of Hamburg and just getting a new passport, and I was someone sitting next to me who was arguing with the administration worker and said, why are you doing that? And he said, I need to. I don't know why, but I need to. And these are situations where I think we can give up these situations if we maybe have some more information about all this stuff, and we can see whether we have a new situation where people have another point of view about the administration.
Yeah, okay. Okay, maybe I'll take one question from the audience. Is this about the open data? Okay, but I'll come to you later then, and then if we've got a question about open data, then John, is yours about open data? Okay, just questions about open data to start off with. Okay, Hans.
Hello, I'm Hans Hagedorn from Demos Gesellschaft für E-Partizipation. I'm really in favor of this idea of open data, but I wonder if there is really a sharp line between public data and private data. I do agree that we should try to protect too much openness of the private data. However, if you have an example like there's a small contractor and he has to publish the details of his contract with a public authority, then you indirectly have the information open about his private income. So where do you see this line? Do you see that open data actually overrules private data and we should go further on in this private area? Or where is this sharp line between open data and private data?
Yeah. So should I just answer, or?
Yeah, if you,
okay. I prefer to just answer. There isn't. I'm with you. There isn't any sharp line where you can say, okay, this is open data and we have to use it, and this is privacy data. This is private data. We have to, of course, protect it. There isn't these sort of sharp lines. This is the reason why we said, okay, we have to protect all private data. Exception is these contracts where we say, okay, if you have a contract with the administration, with the city, and you sell them whatever, you have to publish that. And of course, it is a sort of private data, like it is if someone is a civil servant and is sitting in the administration or in the parliament and says, hey, I'm sitting here. Of course, this is all sort of private data, but I think if you like to deal with a city, have a contract with a city, you have a contract with a society. And this is a situation where it switches for me, and you said, okay, you're selling something to, in a way, all of us. So this is the point where we have to be able just to see who is getting the money. Of course, not the operational, the business secrets, and this is not income. This is just about getting paid for one contract. So there are just few, maybe, businesses who are running on that, just dealing with the city.
Okay, Adam.
Hi, this is Adam. I think the presentation of the data is as important as making it open, because people don't go there. And if some bloggers actually dive into this data and make some explanations, great. But I think Julian Assange was, for instance, complaining that he was explaining bloggers to figure out about WikiLeaks and or make some observations, but it didn't happen. So whose role should it be to make data not only open, but very easy to use and understand for, like you showed, I really love that the German budget, and that was used in other contexts I've seen. Whose role should that be? Should that be outsourced, or should that be a public function? And is there any guidelines on that front that somebody, I think iPhone and Mac created some guidelines for what smartphones should be like, and that's being adopted. It's not a regulation, but okay. Is there a trend that you think people should follow?
It definitely should not be done by the authority. It definitely should be done by interested people, because this is the, I think, if, of course, authority is free to interpret data and give us some graphics and all that stuff. But important is that people on their own, if they have the technical knowledge, of course, are possible to do it on their own and have the possibility to look whether what city is doing is right or not. This is a situation what open data is about. So it is not authority, it should not be a company paid from the government or something like that. It should be the people who are interested in anything and say, hey, I'd like to watch what they are spending the money for, where streets are broken or whatever. You could use any example, or just people saying, okay, hey, I'd like to produce an app where playgrounds are in the city. Whatever, there are millions of examples, and this is for me a very important point, that we got the data and could interpret and use the data on our own, because I think we are all able to deal with them like civil servants are, like Nick has.
Nick wanted to.
I think the other thing to realise about opening up data is that it really does empower civil servants as well, because there's so much information inside your own local authority that you don't know is there and you can't get access to.
Yeah.
That means that you can't do your job very well. So I think that public servants and politicians and political parties should be just as enterprising with open data as development companies and organisations like mine. We can go and do things, bloggers can go and do things, but why shouldn't a particular group of people working in a public organisation think, we've now got access to information, we can now make an app that stops you treading in dog mess, so we're going to make it, because that solves a problem. So it's about putting everybody, giving everybody equal access. And you asked about rules. These aren't quite rules, but Tim Berners-Lee has, in terms of how government should publish data, has his 5 stars of how to publish open data, which basically says, if you've got data, you've got to put it on the web in any format whatsoever. And lots of people still put it on as a PDF, which is silly, but nevertheless. 2 stars is as a machine-readable data, which would be as a spreadsheet, basically. 3 stars would be in a non-proprietary format, which is a spreadsheet that isn't Excel. RDF standards and linked RDF are then getting into linked data stages, but linked data is the 5th star, and it's the ideal, so that that individual piece of spending has a specific, unique identity on the web.